Hi, this is Trevor Conkergood. Welcome to this week's R&K Software Club's video for the week. And our topic for this week is about the Floriani Appli Quilting technique. And of course, that comes with the Floriani Total Quilter software. So if you have Floriani Total Quilter, then I'm sure you're going to enjoy this week's video. And so let's go ahead and make my workspace nice and large. And the first thing I'm going to show you is in my workspace, this toolbar at the top are all tools that relate to Total Quilter. And it's this purple library icon that I want to click on to open up a library of quilt blocks that are all ready to be embroidered. You can click here to choose different folders with different sort of categories of blocks. But essentially, you click to select one and it will open on your screen. And so now that I have this block open on my screen, I want to kind of highlight or point out that you can already see that there are special, I guess, binding motifs, which are part of the embroidery design. And so the idea is that we're going to create this quilt block using our embroidery design. And the technique that Floriani uses is called Appli Quilting, or the other option could be Applique Quilting. And so to get started, once you've opened up a block, you may want to edit it or personalize it before you kind of finalize it and take it to your embroidery machine. And by that, what I mean is I may want to select the binding motifs and choose custom ones, and there are all kinds of cool custom ones to choose from. Essentially, I need to orient myself with the select tool that works with Total Quilter. So this is our normal select tool, and I could use it to select the entire quilt block. But if I wanted to select just this binding motif or just this piece of this block, then I need to use the piece select tool. And so the piece select tool is basically right beside the Appli quilt tool. It's got kind of like a quilt block with a select icon on it. And when I click on that, now I'm in a different type of selecting where I could, for example, select on a piece of the block. So if I select on the navy or I select on the red and the light blue, and for example, if you wanted to change the color of this light blue, you would come in your workspace and click on a new light blue, and it kind of pops up a little menu. Do you want this to be your fabric color, or would you just like to add it to your design palette for kind of use later? And if I say that's the fabric color, then it'll swap that light blue. So click on the navy, same idea. You can control the red, click on the red, and then click on any color in your color palette. You can scroll through all the colors or pop up your color, pop up color palette. But whatever you click when it's selected will become the new color. Now it's a two-step process when you click, because it asks, will it be the fabric color, or do you just want to add this to your design palette? And so if I make it the design color, it'll fabric color, it'll swap out the red for the orange. If I still want a red and I click on the red and just add it to the design palette, then it doesn't change the orange, but it does leave the red in my design palette for use later. So now I can close my palette down. And if you're deciding, I think I want to use that select tool and select the navy and color it red, then when I click on red, once again, I need to tell it to make it my fabric color. And now it'll swap out the fabric color. And so you're able to play with the colors of your fabric, yes, but you're also able, with the same select tool, able to click directly on the line that makes up the outer shape. And there's actually one for the square and there's one for the red square. So one for the kind of inner orange one. And I can hold down my control key and click and select them both. So that's possible. Or I can just click on one and then the other. But when I have one and or both selected, if I look to my properties box, it tells me they're applique binding motifs. And if I click here, there are other choices. And so there's a large list of, I guess, applique binding motifs that could be selected. And whatever one you do select, you simply click on it and then click apply, and that becomes the new binding motif. Of course, there are other settings that are relating to the binding motif. So once again, just click on it to select it. Um, and then let's see, use my P select tool to select on this line, and then it highlights. And now I can see in here the the motif that's been selected already. I could choose another one, or I could change the pattern size or the spacing or the stitch length. And so if I made the pattern size, let's say, larger and click apply, the motif will get bigger. If I change the spacing, I can put a space in between each motif. And if I change the stitch length, I can lengthen the stitches along the lines or shorten them. And so you're in control of what it looks like when you sew the binding motif. Now, perhaps just to review, the Floriani software uses a technique called Appli Quilting, or Applique Quilting. And those are found here on your save buttons, and they're currently dim or not lit up. And that means I would need to select the block first. So if I click here to select my block, notice that those tools have now become available. And there are actually three, but one of them I wasn't planning to talk about today. That would be the faux piecing. We'll talk about that in a different video. But today we'll talk about the Appli Quilting and the Applique Quilting. So the first one says AQ quilt block. It means Appli quilt. And the third one says applique block. And the difference is one small step. So if I choose the first one, the Appli quilt, then I'm given a window with options on how to save it. The first thing would be what folder, where do you want to save it to? And of course, Floriani does have a logical location on the right-hand side in your library called your Appli Quilt library. And so that's where it defaults to save. And it's going to have the name design one, unless I call it something else. And so I'll change it to be today. And notice that it says seam allowance, and it's set to 1/4 of an inch. If you want a different seam allowance, you can change that. If you want no seam allowance, you could, type in 0 kind of thing. Yeah. And then, so now we have what stitch formats and what format do you want to make? And so you can, of course, choose any embroidery format for your embroidery files. It'll also create a Floriani WAF file if you leave this checked off. And below that, it talks about cut files. And if you leave this checked off, then it's also going to create SVG artwork files for the pieces of your quilt. And that would, of course, make it very easy for you to use a digital cutting machine to pre-cut all of your applique pieces. If you'd rather do a printed template, then here where it says cut files, we'll do I'm sorry, I'm looking for the print options here. And so we can turn on for manual cutting, click here, and then that will also include printable, paper piece that you could print and use to make your applique pieces in a more manual way. So if you choose this checkbox, if I click preview, it will actually show me what's going to get printed. And so first of all, it shows you the overall of your quilt block and kind of what it's going to look like. Then it's got kind of analysis of the colors of the quilt block. And so there's just one color of embroidery stitches. And that's what it's saying here, is that all of the binding stitches are going to be the same color. Then it's got the cut pieces. And so we have the center piece. We have the 4, I guess, diamonds around it, or we made them red. And then we've got the light blue background, which is larger than one piece of paper. And so it's showing it in 2 pieces. So that would be if you wanted to make hand templates. If you don't check this, then it won't include the printable instruction pages. and you'll just get the cut files. So basically whatever you check gets included, and if you uncheck it, it would become not included. If you wanted to choose to include an image, then it will make PNG graphics for your quilt blocks, and you could decide, at what resolution that you needed them or wanted them for. So that is kind of the idea, that you can click export, and now it's made a file folder in my computer that includes a WAF file for the entire quilt block. It has SVG and WAF files for each individual color of the design, and it has a PES stitch file to take the machine and sew it all out. And so perhaps what I could do is just start an empty workspace and then look to my library where it says Appli Quilt, and find that there is a folder that says today. And that will be the block that we just prepared. And so I click on the today, and I click on designs to see the design. So this shows all of the things that are included in that folder. So this is the WAF of the complete block. This is the SVG for the orange, inner piece. This is the SVG for the red sort of outside piece. And you'll notice that these are all done in what is known as Appli Quilting. And so if you bring in the PES file and watch it stitch out, it will sew like a wireframe outline of the quilt block. And when it's finished, it will stop and wait for you to apply the quilting fabrics. And so if you've digitally cut them or if you've manually cut them, they'll be ready to place where they sew. And when you, usually we use a product like Floriani Applique Wonder to allow us to not only cut them out, but then stick them down so that they stay in their places. And then when you press start and it sews the third color, it will of course do those binding stitches around your quilt block. And so this is what we call Floriani Appli Quilting. And essentially this is kind of the technique that how it stitches out. Now, if I go back to the original block, okay, so this is where we were originally, and we still have it open, and we had just exported it for Appli Quilting. So now I want to talk about what's the difference if you do applique quilting. So once again, I can select the block by in the properties box, just clicking on select all items. And now I can come up to the top, and instead of choosing the first option for the AQ block, which stands for Appli Quilt block, I'll skip over faux piecing, watch a different video for that one. And then the third one, applique block. So I'll choose this. And now it's essentially all the same choices that we just answered, only there's one more level, and it's what will be the background fabric. So in other words, you can choose any one color in your quilt and determine that that will become the background fabric. And then you simply applique the other colors on top of it. So the difference is if I choose the light blue as it is now, then we can use one large square of light blue fabric with a pre-cut piece for the red and a pre-cut piece for the orange to lay on top. And so that would be the difference, that in Appli Quilting, the light blue would have had any, other areas removed. And so you can actually click here to choose which of the colors in your quilt that you want to be the background. So light blue seems like a logical one, but maybe there was a reason why you really wanted it to be the orange one. And so now the orange would be the solid background, and the red and the blue would become the pieces that applique on top. So you simply click to choose whichever color you want to be your background color, and determine all of the other answers as you did in the previous time. And when you say export, so now it's going to be called design one. Why don't we call it today number 2? And so when I say export, it creates a folder just like last time. And I'll go ahead and close that folder. But now if I use the program to browse on the right where it says library, and I browse to the Appli Quilt library, notice there's another new folder called today number 2. And when we select it and go on the designs tab, now we're seeing the designs for the block made as an applique. And so the main difference was we chose blue as a solid piece of fabric, and the red and the orange would be applique on top. And of course, it's the binding motif that sews it all together. And so a lot of information today, and you may want to watch the video again. Of course, if you have any questions, we're always happy to hear from you. You could visit the RNK Software Club website, start up a support ticket, and we'll be happy to answer questions. But just know that if you're on the RNK Software Club website and you click on Total Quilter, there is a whole gallery of videos that will continue learning about the process of Appli Quilting and Applique Quilting. So until next week, have a great day. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.